Why is this private? Good evening, everyone. I hope coming through clear. Hope we're not choppy tonight. Good deal. Okay. All right. We're going to go on and get started. If you all don't mind, will you like and share? Share it with someone on tonight. Hey, Victoria, how are you? I know it has been a minute, you all, but we're back. So, as always, thank you for tuning in to Wellness Wednesdays with Mayana. Wellness Wednesday was created to uplift, encourage, and inspire. And I hope and pray that at the end of or even during this live that you become, if you're not encouraged, that you become encouraged, that you be uplifted and inspired to do the greater good. So tonight, I know it has been a minute since I've gone live, since I've done anything. I will say this. I have truly, truly, truly missed doing this, missed talking to you all, missed encouraging everyone, and missed, reading your comments because your comments were encouragement to me as well. So thank you again for taking time out to tune in. So we're gonna get right into it. So tonight I want to talk about something that I kind of talked about a couple of months ago, um, not on Wellness Wednesday, but in another setting. And so tonight, the topic is pretty much, can you dig it? And I feel like tonight we can go a little more in depth with it. We probably can take the scenic route. Um, Let me know you're joining in so I can speak to you. And it's called Can You Dig It? And this was dealing with Isaac's, Abraham and Sarah's son, their promise. Um, and you will find this in Genesis 26:17 through 22. And the topic tonight is can you dig it? Can you dig it? Now I don't know about you all, but I am well, thank you, Victoria, for watching on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you. I don't know if y'all know this, but I am a country girl. I grew up in the country. My granddad had all kinds of stuff. So when it comes to digging, I know a little bit about that. My granddad had all types of shovels, and he had this thing called a post hole digger. So one of the things I've learned about digging is that it is a physical activity. It requires you to put everything in it in order to do it. And sometimes, you all, when you got ready to dig, the ground was not always easy. Sometimes it was hard, depending on when the last time it rained, or the texture of the ground, or whatever. Sometimes it's hard, and digging requires physical activity. I mean, you have to put everything in it. You can't be cute with it. You can't be afraid to sweat a little bit. You can't be afraid to maybe even break a nail, and you can't be even afraid to even stop mess your hair up a little bit. So you have to. It's not a pretty activity. It's not a pretty activity. It's a sweaty one. So in Genesis 26:17 through 22, Isaac is experiencing something called a famine. There was a famine in the land. And we know when there is a famine, that means there is a shortage of something. Shortage of food, there's a shortage of water, shortage of whatever. But in this case, there was a famine in the land. And the Lord gives Isaac some specific instructions, and he told Isaac to go do not, first thing he told him to do is do not go down to Egypt, but live in the land that he told him to live in. And here's the thing, you all, when there is a lack in our life, when there is a famine, sometimes, when you seek God and he gives you some instructions, and you think that he's just going to open up the heaven and drop it right in your lap, the food that you need and this that you need. Sometimes God will give you the ingredients that you need in order to make it happen. So if you wanted a cake and he gave you the flour, the flavor, the eggs, the butter, and everything else that goes in it, and sometimes we complain and say, I wanted a cake. He said, well, I did give you the cake. I just didn't give it to you in the form that you wanted in. We're going to have to put some work into it. We can't be afraid to get into it, put our hands in and start working. So here he tells Isaac, I need you to go to a place where I'm going to tell you, but it won't be Egypt. And a lot of times we want to go to places where it looks good, a place where we want to be like Lot. Well, I'm gonna go where I see all the lights. I'm gonna go because over there it looks like it's prospering. Over there it looks like it's doing well. But that is not the place that God is calling us to be. Or we can be like the prodigal son. We can leave. Hey Tay, how are you? We can leave our father's house, a place of safety, a place of refuge, and go to this far city because it looks attractive. And just because it looks like it's doing well does not mean that it is. The lights is just lights. And a lot of times what we don't see, lights can be blinding. And I remember, being younger, and we were driving through the country, and where I lived, I grew up at, they call it the hills. And because it was up. And so as you were coming across the hills, you can look down and see the city that was there, and the lights would be shining on, and it'd be so pretty. But once you got into the city, you'd be like, this is not what I saw from up there, because the lights sometimes are blinding. You don't know what you're walking into until once you get in there. That's good, Victoria. Once you get into it. So we can't be drawn to the light, because there it may not be where we need to be, and what's down there, God really could be protecting us from the danger that we don't see. So he tells him not to go to Egypt. I don't want you to go there. So the Lord told him to stay where he was for a while. And I want y'all to go back and read Genesis 26, 17 through 22. Whichever version you feel comfortable with, read it. And so he tells him to go, and I want you to stay there for a while. Now, here's the thing. Where he was, here's the thing. The Lord says, stay there for a while. You would think that Egypt would be the ideal place. But how many know that God sees farther than we see? He knows way more than we know, because he is the only wise God. Nothing catches him off guard. Nothing catches him by surprise. Nothing is hidden from him. So he sees all. So he tells him to stay there for a while. And a lot of time there is not always where we want to be. There may be a little uncomfortable. There we may be experiencing some things that we don't want to experience, but God says stay there. And I'm gonna tell you what is good about there is that if God told you to stay there, then God is there. His provision is there. His protection is there. His covering is there. So wherever God tells you to be, that means he's there. He's provided something there for you. So he tells them to stay there for a while. Now here's the promise. He gives him the same promise that he gave to his father Abraham. He said, I will be with you and bless you. Now let's look at that. He told him to stay there. And then not only is this a promise, but this is encouragement, because sometimes there can be hard. Sometimes there can be difficult. Sometimes there can be lonely. Sometimes there, I don't even know what to do. I don't know if to stand up or sit down. I don't know whether to skip, run, jump, or hop. But the Lord said, stay there. And he said, I will be with you and bless you. So not only is he going to be with me, he's going to bless me. So had Isaac went to Egypt, he would have missed what God had there for him, because we have to make sure that we're always in the right place in the right time. So if God said move, it behooves us to do what? Move. If God says stand still, then guess what? We need to stand still. If he said turn around, then guess what we need to do? We need to turn around. So he said, I will be with you and bless you. And not only that, you all, he said to you and your descendants. Listen to me. I need you to lean in close and hear me. He said to you and your descendants. Blessings can be passed from generation to generation. And it will depend on our obedience. If my children bless, if my children's children bless, if their children is blessed, it can be based off one act of obedience that cause the blessings to flow from generations to generations. He said to you and your descendants, all those that are coming in your bloodline, all of those that are going to come up in your lineage. So I want you to declare yourself that not only am I blessed, but my bloodline is blessed. Not only is my bloodline blessed, but my children is blessed. My grandchildren are blessed. My great-grandchildren are blessed. My great-great-grandchildren and so forth and so on are blessed. And not only them, those who are connected to me are blessed. He said to you, he said, I'll be with you and bless you. To you and your descendants, he said, I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath that I made to your father. The oath is simply the promise that I made to your father Abraham. So not only did I say it to your father, but I'm going to say it to you. He said, he will make his descendants as numerous as the stars. So how many of you all can look up at the stars and count them and tell me how many in there? I can't. I can't look up there and count the stars and say, oh, I see 100 stars. No, I can't count it. He said, as numerous as the stars in the sky, and give them all these lands with an S. So not just one portion. I'm going to give it all to you. He said, through your offsprings, listen. I need you to lean in one more time. Now, I'm not going to say one more time. We may be leaning and rocking with it all night. He's lean in with me. He said, through your offsprings, your children. He said, nations on the earth will be blessed. Through your offsprings, nations on the earth will be blessed. Listen, your children, because you did what you're supposed to do. Your children, the nations on earth will be blessed because through your offsprings, through them, they're going to be blessed. So that means they're going to be positioned to do great things. They're going to be positioned to be leaders and not followers. They're going to be positioned to be the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath. through your offsprings, nations on earth will be blessed. I need for us to understand a couple of things tonight. And here's one, is that when we be disobedient, it don't just affect us. It affects all those that are connected to us. It affects all those that are coming through our line. When you look at the Bible and you see all those different things that goes on, all it took is one person. Look at prime example. Let's go to the garden. All it took was Adam and Eve to do one something wrong, and the whole world was filled with sin. The whole world was filled with sin. So imagine when we do the right thing according to God's will, according to his way, and according to the purpose that he has in our life. If two people can set the whole world array, then imagine what we can do when we do it how God says to be done. So through your offsprings, nations on earth will be blessed. That's right, Victoria, that what we see is not how it's always going to be. Let's go back to what I said about that cake. When you get all these ingredients, when you look at these ingredients, it don't look like the cake that you want. It just look like a bunch of stuff scattered all around. But once you start getting in there and mixing all those things together, and it goes in the heat in the oven, and it comes out, it no longer look like that flour and that egg and that flavor and that sugar and all that other stuff that you had to put in it to make it what it is. It no longer look like that. But if we take our eyes off the fact that all we got are ingredients and start looking at our ingredients as, hey, all of this is going to work together for my good. When God get done with this going to turn out to be something sweet. This is going to turn out to be something great. This is going to be turned out to be something excellent. And God will get the glory and we get the victory. So yes, ma'am, it's not always what you said. What I see is not how it's going to be. No, because greater is in store. So listen, he said, through your offsprings, nations on earth will be blessed. Now, the tokens of God's goodwill to Isaac, he blessed him, he prospered him, and made all that he had to thrive under his hands. Listen, even in the midst of the famine, though other people may be directly affected by it, we don't have to be, because if we stay in God's will and we do it according to his plan, then we can be blessed right in the midst of a famine. And not only just to say, look at what God has done for me, that we can be a blessing to somebody else that's struggling in the famine. So that's why he blesses us, to be a blessing to someone else. To be a blessing to someone else. So now, he blessed him and prospered him in the midst of a famine. And he made all that he had to thrive under his hands. So the next time you feel like you're going through a famine in your life, you ask God, Lord, give me your divine instructions. What am I supposed to do in the midst of this famine? How am I supposed to get around? What is the plan? Give me the blueprint so I can follow it. Because I know, because see, there's a way that seems, the Bible said there's a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof is destruction. It may have seemed right for Isaac to go to Egypt, but it probably wouldn't have prospered him anything. But God told him to stay where he was sending him for a while, and I'm going to be with you and bless you and cause you to prosper. And that's exactly what God did. And it said it made all he had to thrive under his hand. Now, when you go down, now remember, I want y'all to go back and read Genesis 26, 17 through 22. And it says in verse 12, it said his corn multiplied strangely. Now, why is that strange that his corn multiplied? And then it said he had no land of his own, but took land of the Philistines. Hold on. Let's look at something. First, it said multiply strangely. Remember, it's a famine. So there is something missing. Either there's food missing or water is missing. But it multiplied strangely. To other folk, it may look strange for you to prosper in the situation that you in the predicament that you in. But is there anything too hard for God? He is the one that's able to make a river flow through a desert, a dry place. He's the same one that told the prophet to speak to the dry bones. And if he can make dry bones stand as an exceeding great army, then imagine what God can do in your situation if you just trust him and if you just believe him and you take him at his word. So his corn multiplied strangely. It looks strange to the Philistines. And understand something, you all. The Philistines were enemies of Israel. They were never friends. So here it is. He had no land of his own, but took land of the Philistines. So right in the midst of his enemies, he began to prosper. I believe in Psalms 23 says, I prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. So here it is. God is preparing something right in the presence of his enemies. And saying, but took land of the Philistines and sold it. Not sold as S-O-L-D, but sold S-O-W-E-D. Like he began to plant seed. So we have to begin to be sowers. We're going to sow right here. Why? Because this is where God told me to be. So I'm going to sow right here. He said, plant here. This is where I'm going to plant. And he says, be it observed for the encouragement of poor tenants that occupy other people's land and are honest and industrious. So God blessed him with great increase in somebody else's field and somebody else's land. God gave him increase, great increase, and he reaped 100-fold. And there seems to be an emphasis laid upon the time. It was the same year when there was a famine in the land. Go back to he reaped 100-fold. A lot of times I used to think that if I plant $10, then I reap 100-fold, then I'm gonna get $10 back, right? But that's not from my studying. If my memory serves me correctly, that's not necessarily what that means. That means if he planted 20 seeds, then all 20 seeds prosper. You know, it's like when you pop popcorn, you know how some popcorn won't pop. You still have kernels in the bag that did not pop. Well, in this case, 100-fold means every kernel in the bag popped. So there was no kernel seed left because it all popped. So every seed that he planted produced. Every seed that he planted produced. It produced something. So what are you planting? What are you sowing? So everything he planted, it produced. Nothing was lost. Everything was gained. So, and he did all of this, you all, in a famine. While there was a famine in the land, while everything else was scarce. While everybody was scarcely reaping, he was reaping bountifully. See, that's just the kind of God we serve. And he reaped plentifully. And not only did his harvest increase, his plants, but the Bible says his cattle also increased. Then he increased. And he employed and maintained those that work for him. We don't have to suffer in a famine. I believe that in the midst of lack, that the reason we suffer being children of God is because we're not wise stewards. We sow everywhere else, but we don't save. Let's look at Joseph when Pharaoh had the dream and he had to interpret the dream. And he told him there was going to be 7 years of plenty, and then there was going to be 7 years of famine. When the 7 years of plenty came, they didn't just go out and mess it up. what they did, they started putting it in the storehouse, preparing for the 7 years of famine. So when the famine came, they were able to help other people. They were able to help other people. Why? Because they were wise stewards. So we have to learn to become wise stewards over what God has given us. We don't have to spend it on everything. Just because it's a sale does not mean we have to buy it. Just because it's available does not mean we have to get it. We have to be wise stewards. We have to be wise stewards. Thank you, Victoria, for putting that scripture in there for me. Now, I want to get to the digging part, but this has been so good to me. This has been so good to me. Now, remember, there is a famine, and the Lord told him that he would be with him and bless him. And we see that Isaac planted crops in that land, and the same year, you all, he reaped 100-fold because the Lord blessed him. When we do it according to God's plan, he will bless it. Remember when Jesus fed the multitude and the little boy had the 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread? The Bible said the Lord blessed it and he broke it and he distributed. And not only, and he had 12 baskets full left. So everybody ate, and then there was some left. When we entrust what we have and what we're doing in God's hands, then he will bless it. Even in the breaking, he will bless it. He will bless it. So guess what? Isaac became rich. His wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. I don't know about y'all. I want to be very wealthy. Not so I can brag, but so I can be a blessing to somebody else. And listen, I need y'all to lean in again. This is another lean in moment. It says, and the Philistines became envious, meaning they were resentful. They were jealous. They desired what he had. When God starts blessing you, when God starts elevating you, don't be surprised when people begin to be envious of what God is doing in your life. Because first of all, here it is. And this is how he see it. Here how they see it. Here it is, this foreigner in our land, sowing in our land, reaping more than we are, doing way better than we are. Here he is, prosperous and wealthy and all these other things. And here we are, we barely making it. So yes, I would be mad too, I guess. But one thing about it, you all, you cannot curse what God has blessed. You may not like it, and that's okay. And guess what? We don't need you to like it. We don't need you to like it. So it said he became rich, his wealth continued to grow, and until he became very wealthy. And the Philistines became envious. And it's just like the enemy. As God begins to elevate, right before God begins to elevate you, and after he begins to elevates you, the enemy is on the prowl, want to knock you down, want to pull you back. And so here's the thing. And so they was envious and they resented him. And so one thing about it, when God starts blessing you, especially in a place and a time where it doesn't seem ideal to man, when it doesn't seem ideal to man, people get mad. People get mad. They get mad. So here's the thing. And this is one of the tactics of the enemy. I need y'all to lean in again. So now we're getting ready to talk about this digging. But we had to go through all of that. We had to take a walk tonight. So here's the thing. So listen, it said the Philistines filled the wells. Now, you know, a well, that's where you get your water. If you're growing something, if you have livestock, you have workers, you have family, you need water. We all need water. And so because they were so envious, because they hated the fact that this man was prospering, they stopped up the wells. They stopped it up. And so their hatred for God and his people was so high that they were willing to murder them by shutting off the water. And remember that the enemy comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. And that supply, and by shutting the water, that supply that all they need was to thrive. They cut off the water supply, what they needed to thrive. And so after Isaac started growing, the king of that place said, hey, you got to go. You can't be amongst us because you're getting too big. Don't be alarmed when people start dismissing themselves from you, because they're saying, oh, now you acting funny. Now you acting brand new. Yes, I'm acting brand new because I am new. Yes. So he left. And the Bible says Isaac began to do something, you all. He began to dig. And when he dug, there was a well. And these wells that his father had dug previously, before Isaac was even born, these are wells that his father had already dug. The Philistines just stopped him up. And so here he is digging. And remember, I told you at the beginning of this, digging requires physical activity. You got to put some work into it. You're going to have to put some action into it. Sometimes you're going to have to put your foot on it to break up the dirt, to pull it out what's already covered up. And let me tell you this, lean in again. I told you we're going to be leaning all night. That sometimes there is some things that God have on the inside of us that we have allowed disappointments, we have allowed hurt, we have allowed setbacks, we have allowed that things hadn't happened when we wanted to happen to cover up the thing that God has on the inside. So that's why the topic tonight is, can you dig it? Because you're going to have to uncover that stuff. It's like, yes, Victoria, faith without works is dead. Faith without work. You got to put some work into it. I believe God, and I believe he told me to build here, then I got to go and build. I can't stand there and fold my arms and say, oh, here go the house, gonna be right here. No, I got to build. I got to do something. We got to break up this dirt. And so there are some things on the inside, some gifts, some talents, the anointing that's on the inside that we didn't allow stuff to cover it up. But we got to dig tonight, you all. And so he dug. Isaac and his servant began to dig, and he named the first well Esek, which means the well of dispute. So when he dug, it's because when the Philistines saw that he had found water, they got mad and said, this is ours. And he named it Esek because they wanted to dispute with him. Listen, we don't have time to argue with nobody. I'm not going back and forth with you. You want to argue? Argue about yourself. Find somebody else. So what he did, and one of the things I love about this is that although Isaac dug and uncovered this water, this well, and they disputed with him, Isaac said, okay. And guess what he did? The Bible said he moved on a little bit further and he started digging again. Remember, this is a physical activity. That means you're going to get tired. You're going to get sweating. You may even get frustrated, but you got to keep on digging. And so he dug again. And he named this well Sitnah, because the Philistines, see, that's the enemy want to wear you out. And I'm telling you, because this is a physical activity, you can get worn out physically, tired. And so he named it Sitnah because here they are coming with opposition. Anytime God has something with you, you can expect opposition. But what you can also expect is that God will be there with you to lead and guide you. So he dug. And so the enemy came and laid claim on that well, said this is ours, when technically it wasn't theirs. These are wells that his father dug. Well, fine, you can have it. And see, this is a pivotal point here. He could have given up. He and his servants could have given up and said, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of every time I dig, the enemy takes something from me. Have you ever been in that position when it seems like every time I put one step forward, I get pushed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 steps backwards? But the thing is, I cannot afford to give up. I gotta keep on digging. So the first well was a well of dispute. They wanted to dispute and argue with him. The next well he dug, he faced some opposition. But there's a third well, you all. There is a third well, because he didn't give up and he kept digging. And I want to encourage your heart right here tonight. Come on and lean in with me one more time. Well, I'm not gonna say one more time. Come on and lean in with me again. I know you're tired, and I know you feel exhausted, and I know you may be feeling weary. But the Bible said, "Be not weary in well doing." He said, "You will reap if you faint not." Hey, Shamika, you will reap if you faint not. Keep digging, keep moving. Keep progressing, but don't, whatever you do, don't stop. If you have to wipe the sweat from your forehead, go ahead and do it. Even if you have to take a sip of water, go ahead and do it. But you gotta keep moving. Yes, sure, you gotta keep pressing towards the mark, because I got a promise from the Lord. And if I give up, I'm gonna miss it. So you keep pressing, you keep digging. It's hard, but it's worth it. I'm tired, but it's rewarding. I want to give up, but great is the promise that God has given me. I can't give up, because he said back in the beginning, he told Isaac, I will be with you and bless you. Even when I feel like I'm by myself, God is with me. When everybody I felt like should have been here helping me didn't help me, but God remained the same. He stayed, and he's with me. And I know that when you're feeling weak, I want you to know that God's weak strength is made perfect in your weakness. He's a very present help in the time of trouble. Keep digging. So I got a question before we get to the next well. Lean in with me again. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? The answer is yes, I can. I may not have a shovel. I may have to use my hand, but I'm going to keep on digging. I may not have a shovel. I may have to use a spoon, a fork, a rake, or something. I don't care. I'm not going to allow what I don't have to stop me from doing what God has called me to do. So by any means necessary, we got to be like Malcolm X in this moment. By any means necessary, I'm going to dig this well. I'm going to uncover what God has placed on the inside of me. And I need y'all to understand, a lot of time when you see water referenced in the scripture, it is referring to the Holy Spirit. He said, out of your belly shall flow rivers with an S of living water. And the reason it's not flowing is not because it's not there, because he said, I placed it inside of you. But the reason it's not flowing because we have allowed so much stuff that's going on around us, so much stuff that's going on the inside of us. We have allowed it to dam up our river. But tonight, we're going to dig it. We're going to uncover that thing that God has placed on the inside of us. So Isaac moved a little bit further. He moved a little bit further. And the Bible says he dug again. And this time, and I'm going to tell you all, the enemy gives up at some point. But he hoping you give up first. But we're going to make him the lie that he is. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give in. The Bible said Isaac and his servants moved a little bit further. And they dug again. And this time, listen, you all, this time, the first two, the enemy came. And he thought he had won. Don't think, you all, that the enemy won and you lost because the enemy can't, because you dealt with dispute and you dealt with opposition. You got to know there's always greater in store. So he dug again, and the Bible said that he called this well Rehoboth, which means a well of plenty room, which means that God made room for him. I need y'all to put in the chat tonight, God made room for me. In the midst of the famine, God made room for me. In the midst of my hurt and pain, God made room for me. And not just room, more than enough room. Plenty of room. He expanded me. He enlarged my territory. And see, what the enemy took was nothing compared to what God had in store for me. He made room for me. And this time, the enemies didn't even try to steal it. Because one thing you cannot do, you cannot defeat a determined person. You cannot defeat a person that God has his hands on. You cannot defeat them. so. Got plenty of room. And he says, for now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. I don't know about you. I don't know about you. I faced some opposition. I faced some things that didn't feel good, didn't look good, didn't want to go through it, didn't want to deal with it. But I'm here to tell you that God made room for me. And God has no respect to person. And just like he made room for me, he's making room for you tonight. He's making room for you tonight. What if Isaac had given up when he first dug, when he faced opposition? How many of us have given up at the first sight of opposition? Or how many of us have given up when there was a dispute, an argument? Say, I'm done with it. I'm not doing this anymore. Not so. Not so. Keep digging, because God made room for you. There's not just room, plenty room, more than you need. It wasn't just for Isaac, it was for all of those that was with him. So you got room enough. God making room for you right here in the midst of where you are. In that very space that you are, God is making room for you. So I don't see how it's going to happen. You don't have to see how it's going to happen. Your only job is to do what God told you to do. Isaac had a job, and that was to dig. It wasn't his job to figure out how God was going to do it. That's God's business. That's God's business. And the problem is we so worried about how God gonna do something. We all in his business, and we're not doing the business that he gave us to do. He said dig. He didn't ask you, he didn't tell you to sit up there and wonder how he was gonna do a thing. You did. Let God be God, and you get to digging. You get to digging. Now, he named it Rehoboth, and there was so many different things when it said was wide open spaces. Oh God, he gave us room to do what we need to do. More than enough room. No longer was everything he did controversial or contested. Now it was prosperous and abundant. He got to his breakthrough. Breakthrough came. Woo! At last, finally, breakthrough came. And I need y'all to know something. Lean in with me. Y'all tired of leaning? It's okay. Lean anyway. It says, because Isaac acted and then react, the enemy finally had to leave him alone. When they wanted to argue, Isaac didn't stand there and go back and forth with him. He just moved on. When he faced opposition, he didn't put up his bristles, as somebody say. He didn't do that. He just moved on. So instead of reacting, we just gonna act. And what was the act? He moved on and kept digging. Now, when God makes room for you, come here. Okay, come on, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna be done. When God makes room for you, even your enemies will have to get out the way. Your enemies will be the one that throw up their hands and say, I'm done with it. Yes, you are. And as I get ready to go, not only will he make room, he will restore you. Restoration is coming. Restoration is coming. Keep digging. I don't care if it's just you. Keep digging. Keep digging. Keep pressing. Stay the course. Stay in faith. Keep trusting and believing God. Okay? So I'm going to ask you the question again tonight as we get ready to close. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? I'm with you, sure. I can dig it. One last thing. I said I was going to say and be done. Don't allow what you don't have to stop you from doing what God has called you to do. If he said dig, and the first thing he said, well, I don't have a shelf, that's okay. Use what you have. Use what you have. When Moses got and the children of Israel got to the Red Sea, what did they have? What did Moses have? He told Moses, what you have in front of you? What's in your hand? He had a rod. He said, stretch it out. Didn't make sense, but it worked. Why? Because that's God. God said it. So you use what you have. Use what you have. So my prayer for you tonight, that you uncover those gifts. You uncover that well on the inside. Because God said he's given us everything pertaining to godliness. Everything we need, God has given us. It's on the inside of us. Dig. I want y'all to dig in prayer. Spend time with God. Dig in his word. Because a lot of times we just scratch the surface. And when we scratch the surface, all we see is more dirt. We don't see anything. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll find something. Dig in prayer. Dig in your word. Dig in your relationship with him. He wants to hear from all of us. So my prayer tonight is that God blesses you and restores you, that he gives you the strength to keep digging, even when you're facing opposition, that you have enough strength to walk away. Even when people want to argue, you walk away. I know you say, I'm tired of being the bigger person. It's okay. He's going to change your circle. Because if you're always the bigger person, that means your circle is too small. So keep digging. I pray that when restoration comes, that you look back, you all, and you're going to see your children and your grandchildren blessed because of something that you did, because you kept digging. Okay? I love you all. I have missed doing Wellness Wednesday. I love you all so much. Thank you for tuning in. I pray your heart was encouraged. Your heart is encouraged. I pray you are uplifted. And I pray you feel inspired to dig. Don't give up. Don't give out. Keep digging. Okay? Thank you all so much for tuning in. And stay tuned. And I'll let you know when we're going to do this, when I'm coming back live again. So you all have a good night. Thank you. And share this with somebody. Tag somebody in the comments. Tell them, come on and dig it. All right. You guys have a good night.